Butterfingers.
There is a whole bunch of Spider-Mania coming to us in the next year or so, with the upcoming Spider-Man No Way Home coming out in December, and the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse soon to follow in 2022. We're deciding to take a look at where the live-action Spidey craze all began. Welcome back to Patrol Clip, webheads, and today we're going to be going way back to the early 2000s to the most unforgettable moments from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. More specifically, the best moments from the original live-action Spider-Man himself, Tobey Maguire. We have a lot to cover, so real quick before we begin, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to stay up to date on all things Patrol Clip. Now let's swing into it!
Tally-ho.
Number 10, Peter's First Swing. Let's start the first entry on our list with the first time Peter Parker tested out his swinging abilities. We know that he eventually gets it right and gets pretty good at it, but it's always super funny to see a hero discovering their abilities for the first time. And this moment is no exception. After Peter's first wall crawl, he decides that it might be time for his first building swing, and it's pretty frickin' hilarious how it plays out.
Fly.
Peter tries out a whole bunch of different hand gestures and movements, and even ad-libs a few choice words trying to produce webbing from his wrist.
Go! Go! Go, Web, go!
And when he eventually gets it right, it's swinging away until he funnily crashes into a billboard. It's a charming scene that perfectly captures Peter Parker's goofiness in his early days as the wall-crawling hero. Number 9, my back! Speaking of goofiness, the whole Raimi trilogy is chock full of it.
Butterfingers.
I mean, have you seen the amount of memes it's produced?
Back to formula.
Spider-Man 2 might be the funniest one out of all of them by a significantly close margin. Don't think we're counting you out yet, Spider-Man 3. This scene is one of the funniest in the movie. After Peter has an incredible moment of growth, he goes to a building rooftop with
strong focus on what I want.
What follows is an epic sequence of Peter running towards the edge of the building and taking a literal leap of faith, all the while shouting, "I'm back! I'm back!" You could say that we were swept up in the moment until he slowly starts to tumble down into an alleyway with a fall that definitely made us wince a little. Ending with the hilarious line,
My back. Oh, my back.
quite the subversion of the typical superhero comeback for sure. Number 8, getting the symbiote suit. One of the coolest and, dare we say, chilling things to happen to Peter during Spider-Man 3 was when he obtained the symbiote suit. Unlike in the comics, where it kinda just comes on him in a pretty laid-back manner, the sequence had a lot more suspense to it. You could definitely tell that this had Raimi's trademark all over it. After desperately trying to stay awake, listening out for any signs of Uncle Ben's true killer, Flint Marko, Peter, exhausted and angry, lays down on his bed to get some well-needed shut-eye. While he's asleep, however, the alien symbiote that snuck home with him starts to slowly crawl closer and closer, staying in the shadows and out of sight before finally latching itself onto Peter and washing over him in quite a sinister manner. Peter wakes up, but it's too late. What follows is a powerful scene showing Peter adjusting to his new suit and its powers, with an epic score by Christopher Young blasting over it all. It's a great sequence that has yet to be seen or replicated in any other live-action Spider-Man movie. Number 7, Uncle Ben's death. We won't talk too much about this one, as it's probably a tearjerker for most of you, but nonetheless, the impact that this moment had on Peter's journey as Spider-Man is felt throughout the entire trilogy. Uncle Ben's death is indeed one of, if not the most important factors in Peter's decision to become Spider-Man, and its first live-action interpretation is handled beautifully, with both actors, Cliff Robertson and Tobey Maguire, giving incredible performances. It's a heartbreaking and vital scene in the trilogy, no doubt. Number 6, final swings. Okay, we're cheating a little with this one, being that it's a 2-in-1 entry, but can you really deny how breathtaking those final swinging scenes are? The first one from Spider-Man 1 was revolutionary for its time, and the CG still holds up fairly darn well, but that's nothing compared to Spider-Man 2's final swing. Following the emotional reunion of Peter and MJ and the oh-so-classic line,
"Go get him, Tiger."
Spidey flies out into New York City with an outstanding score by Danny Elfman, electrifying the moment as our hero swings off into the sunset. Not just an amazing, no pun intended, take on the riding off into the sunset trope, but it's a great way to end a Spider-Man story. Hey, wall crawlers, you still with us? Well, that's good, because J. Jonah Jameson would definitely want a front page story on these next entries. And don't forget to leave an email with your subscription today so you can receive a free PDF on how to become a successful social media influencer. Number 5, Final Fight with Norman Osborn. We talked about the final swing. Now it's only natural for us to talk about the final battle between Spidey and the Green Goblin at the end of Spider-Man 1. After an intense sequence with Spidey saving both Mary Jane and a group of children, the two foes duke it out in an abandoned building. At first, Gobby really beats the hell out of the web-slinger and almost to a bloody pulp, which is pretty brutal. Peter, with his mask now half destroyed from the explosion, strikes back and overpowers the Goblin pretty quick until Norman Osborn comes out of the Goblin shell to convince Peter to stop. What Peter doesn't know is that all of the Goblin's evil intentions still remain within Norman because he commands his glider to stab him from behind. However, Norman doesn't know that Peter has a little something called spider sense. So he's taken quite by surprise when Peter backflips over the glider as it impales Norman.
Oh.
The heartbreaking line,
Don't tell Harry.
ends the fight and begins Peter's conflict with Harry over the next 2 movies. Number 4, the Symbiote Phase. We mentioned a little bit about the symbiote earlier, but not quite the detail that we should have gotten into, at least not yet. Despite being somewhat of a messy movie, it certainly has its moments, funny and serious, which we'll get to soon enough. In our opinion, the most memorable moment from the entire movie is when Peter goes under the influence. No, not that way. The symbiote starts to take control of Peter's personality, and it brings out the worst in him, which is an emo guy. And not just any emo guy, but an emo guy in a suit jacket who walks down the street to James Brown. Yeah, honestly, it's not the worst thing that could have happened, but the comedic execution of the moment makes us laugh and also feel kind of weirded out. Still, who could forget that iconic dance? I think Peter definitely kept his best move secret from us the whole time, huh? Number 3, Spider-Man No More. Switching from comedy right into another tear-jerking and emotional scene, this moment from Spider-Man 2 is a definite contender for one of the best scenes in the entire trilogy. When Peter's powers suddenly stop working as he starts to lose responsibility in the real world, he decides that his double life as Peter Parker and Spider-Man maybe just isn't worth it, and that the world would be better without Spidey. An incredibly emotional one-on-one scene follows between Peter and Uncle Ben, with Ben trying to convince Peter that he can pull through and do it, and offers for Peter to
take my hand, son.
Peter sadly refuses with the devastating line,
I'm just Peter Parker. I'm Spider-Man. No more.
And the sequence that follows is ripped directly from one of the most famous Spidey comic covers, with his suit thrown into a trash can, the silhouette of Pete walking away in the rain, and the caption reading Spider-Man No More. A very important scene in the movie and one of the most iconic in the trilogy. Number 2, Last Dance with Mary Jane. You might be surprised by our positioning of this one on the list, but let us explain. We know that Spider-Man 3 was a major letdown when it came out, but over the years, fans have begun to appreciate its best moments a little more. We mentioned previously that it's had its fair share of comedic and serious moments.
Smoke.
This is one of the latter, coming in at the very end. After the exhausting final battle and Harry Osborn's tragic death, instead of ending in an epic swinging montage, we instead share one last moment between MJ and Peter as they slowly dance together inside a nightclub. There is not a single word of dialogue spoken, but their faces show all of us what we need to know, as the trilogy closes out on quite the somber note. In a sort of fourth wall breaking kind of way, this is also the last time we would ever see these two share the screen, and it leaves us wondering, what could have gone down with Spider-Man 4 if they hadn't rebooted the franchise? Before we arrive at our number 1 spot, we have to give an honorable mention to the interactions between Peter Parker and our favorite cigar-smoking editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson.
I'll give you 150.
300.
That's outrageous. Done.
Their chemistry is more than entertaining, and in every scene they're together, Jonah surprisingly takes the spotlight, thanks to J.K. Simmons' perfect performance. Plus, their relationship is one of the most unique things in Spider-Man media, and it's portrayed pretty well in the Raimi trilogy.
You want a staff job, and you want a staff job. Anybody care about what I want?
I do.
Shut up. Get out.
And now for our number one, train fight with Doc Ock / stopping the train. I mean, there's really nothing much else to be said here. The train fight sequences in Spider-Man 2 is one of the best scenes in a superhero movie ever. And man, does it still grip us after all these years. Right after Spider-Man regains his powers, he goes to find Doc Ock, which then leads into an epic fight on board a moving train. The fight takes place in, out, and around the train as Spidey's doing all sorts of acrobatic moves and tricks. However, when the fight ends, the intensity only winds up more as Doc Ock breaks the train's controls and leaves Spidey to deal with the aftermath. What follows is the most memorable sequence for Spider-Man 2 as well as the entire trilogy, as Spidey jumps in front of the train and, after trying many different options, finally starts slowing the train down by shooting webs at nearby buildings and holding on with all of his mere strength. In the end, he does save everyone, and the sequence serves as a fantastic representation of what a live-action Spider-Man should do. Or, does whatever a spider can. Well, that's our list. It was pretty hard whittling down the best moments out of Tobey Maguire's Spidey run, but it's safe to say that these are the most memorable. Even still, if you have any moments that you feel like we should have included, feel free to comment down below. And while you're at it, if you haven't already, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to stay up to date on all things Patrol Clip in the future. Thanks for watching, and until next time!